maximum payout. You know, it's like, but you can't do this. It's like, you gave me $20 and I just gave you $400. Now get out of here before I call the police.
Basically.
Hey, we're live. Where the hell is
Yes, we are. So, the reason why I like to go live is to catch some of the conversations beforehand. So,
we'll fire it up with, man.
So, welcome back, everyone. My name is David Streggy. I run Movies Galore of Milwaukee. I run Inside Movies Galore, and this is episode number 20. And we are going to talk about Turbo Kid, which is about in an alternatively world from 1997.
Post-apocalyptic.
The apocalyptic Canadian wasteland.
It's from the 80s.
And he basically
shot in the future.
He basically meets a robot and goes up against this motley crew of robotic dudes on
No, you gave it away.
Bikes. But
spoiler alert!
I didn't spoil it because everyone can have a chance to explain it from their view. So I'm going to go with
I saw it coming.
Tito, since Tito hasn't been on a couple of episodes. Tito, what did you think of this film when you first saw it? What did you think of it now? Why don't you go ahead and tell us your thoughts?
Okay, I actually saw it when it first got released out on Blu-ray. I went ahead and picked up one of the limited edition 3-disc sets at the time.
Ooh, hot.
Basically, I think that someone was a fan of Road Warrior or Mad Max films, but they didn't have the budget, so they went and used BMX bikes. Seemed like a lot of hodgepodge of a film. No payoff in the end for me. Really a piece of trash. Halfway in, I realized it.
Fight.
Seemed like a collection of references or symbols without soul to me. The soundtrack, the sound effects, they're pretty much just awful. The movie seemed like it was worse than that 80s movie Battle Truck. I don't know if you guys seen that. I'm a little bit older than you guys.
That's Roger Corman, I believe.
Basically, I suffered through it again today just so I could kind of like relive it. I don't know why, but I was coming live. I just, unfortunately, lately, every time I'm on here, there's not a movie I enjoy.
But we're starting to wonder if you enjoy any movies.
It made me sit through the damn Exorcist. Like,
I
you're allowed to be wrong, though. I mean, it's okay.
Well, you know, I always wondered if that bimbo robot was hot in real life, but obviously now I found out who she was and I looked her up, and she definitely has a distinct look to her. But that's kind of how I felt about it.
What?
Wow.
Okay.
I think I need a shower after that.
Why don't you tell us when you first saw this film and what the film means to you, and explain it in your own words.
Who are you talking to, me?
Yep.
Okay.
Sure.
Did you get out of the shower?
I actually love this movie. I saw it for the first time in 2015 at a Tear in the Isles event in Chicago at the Vic Theater. And we saw the video, video that you might have heard the song at the end of Kung Fury, for anybody who's seen that on Netflix. Kung Fury.
My shit, yes.
The song at the end, the David Hasselhoff song, I forget the name of it at the moment.
Survivor.
We saw the
True
Survivor. We saw the video for that before Turbo Kid, so that was extra awesome. But I super love this movie. I think it's very cool. Definitely a Mad Max on BMX, which I think is rad. I don't know. I thought that was cool. And I would probably win Mom of the Year for this, but I let my 9-year-old see this movie, and she actually loves it too. So I really dig the like 80s vibe about it. I dig that about like Stranger Things too, that kind of 80s nostalgia and this post-apocalyptic 1997. And of course, Michael Ironside as the villain, super awesome as well. And Apple is one of my favorite characters in all of film. Like, super love her. She's totally my fun spirited side, and I just totally relate to
That's a sexy robot.
that character.
Interesting.
So not even anything to do with her being sexy or anything. My kid actually wants to cosplay her, so I'm working on coming up with that outfit. But no, she's just a super fun, happy character, and I just really love her. So I could go on forever about this movie because I like it a lot, and I'm glad we're talking about it.
You suggested it, right?
I did.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
So, Dane, what was your perspective? And was this your first time seeing it?
Yes, it was. I just watched it like an hour ago because, again, I'm lazy. Which actually, yeah, I'm glad I'm next because I did want to jump off a few points that Katie brought up. So, just for reference, I just turned 26 3 days ago. So I was born in '91.
You son of a bitch.
I was a mid to late '90s, early 2000s kid. What I would consider a kid, I'm not counting like middle school or high school kind of stuff. That's for me. That was what childhood was. So I have a different perspective on things. So in other words, stuff that is very 80s nostalgia heavy, I didn't grow up then, so I don't fully relate to it. I have experienced a lot of that stuff retroactively, specifically with video games and movies and stuff, but it's not the same as you having lived it. So therefore, when I or anybody younger than, the target audience for this film, when they were to see it, then what you get is a huge kind of potpourri of I don't know if that's the right word, smorgasbord maybe is the right word, of 80s nostalgia from, like, you saw the Power Glove, you saw the Zelda hearts, you saw bicycles from E.T., you saw the Terminator half fleshy face, you saw reference.
It was like a hodgepodge of stuff.
Yeah, you saw reference, which, again, if you grew up then, that's wonderful. You're probably, your eyes are filling with stars and all that. And I didn't grow up during that decade, so, which is, again, I'm not necessarily saying this as criticism. It's just that because I don't go back and say, oh, I remember those, then I notice them a lot more. And so then initially what I was wondering was, like, did they have a checklist of everything that was ever popular in the 80s and just make sure to include it? Or was this really coming from their hearts? And the longer that the movie went on, I got more of the sense of the latter as opposed to the former, which is good. And I do feel like it, again, like Mad Max and, all the stuff we've said, that was all very clear. A couple of things that I did think were a little odd, possibly, relative to what it was. Well, first of all, a lot of praise. Let me just keep on the praise. A lot of praise for making a lot out of a little, because I think this was very low budget. So they made a lot out of a little. Very good visual effects. It was well put together. And if you really do love everything that the 80s is, like, especially, I did love the music a lot. I loved synth anyway. Regardless if it's 80s synth, regardless of whether it's 80s synth or whatever, I just love it. But anyway, so it's very loving for that decade and for everything that it entailed. If anything, I think that it accomplished with flying colors what the Angry Video Game Nerd movie tried to be, as far as, like, a loving tribute to that era. So I give it a lot of credit for that. And it was like an actual movie, as opposed, like, the AVGN, like, that's only really for the hardcore fans. But anyway, so those are a lot of positives. things that I didn't really feel meshed all that well. Like I did like the girl that you like so much. She was well portrayed and everything. My big beef with her as a character is that her role in the story, and this was a criticism I'd have of it, the romance in the film is so modern, which really clashed with the 80s feel of it, because what it is it's the millennial romance. It's the manic pixie dream girl who comes into the main character's life to inspire him, and then she leaves, in the form of death or in the form of whatever. Like that's the model that this character was following, which again, it's not necessarily a bad thing because she played it very well and all that. I noticed it. Which again, I just thought it was a little odd considering everything else is so 80s. But yeah, so there was that, and she was well portrayed and everything. The only other thing is her hair and her style of dress, exactly like you said. It feels a bit like not only is she sort of like the manic pixie dream girl, but she's also a little bit like a composite of the stereotypical Comic-Con cosplay girl, like the fangirl type. It seems like she's very much someone, and a lot of the costumes in here feel like they're very deliberately designed so that people can cosplay as these characters at conventions, which I would say is probably smart marketing, but also it just for
And
her it just
surprisingly not happening at this point.
interesting. You'd think it would, because
I
it
haven't
seems
seen
so
much at all.
specifically designed for it, though, doesn't it?
They're cheap.
It does, except for I'm having a hell of a time finding a teal jumpsuit, let me tell you.
Yeah, but again, like I can see why people would absolutely love her. I noticed that trope pretty strongly with her character, which again, that's such a modern trope. Like that term "manic pixie dream girl" was invented in reference to the Cameron Crowe film Elizabethtown in 2005. So it's a relatively new name for that trope.
But I think that's what makes it work, don't you, with the modern audience? I mean, my 9-year-old loves the movie.
Yeah,
And she knows nothing of it.
I didn't even know that was a trope. I was just like, whoa, she's weird. What?
Look it up. It's definitely a trope. But and I get it. I completely get it. It's a way to try and link the two audiences together, which admittedly this current decade is a bit like the 80s part 2. Anyway, but
Celeste.
yeah. But anyway, yeah, I did think that was one other thing that's one thing that kind of clashed for me. The other thing was that with the bikes and everything, I imagine that was probably for budget reasons, but I was like, you couldn't have done like hogs or motorcycles or anything. It did seem a little borderlining on chintzy. Not for
But he was a kid.
not
Turbo
no,
Kid.
for the kid.
I think we're missing the entire point of Turbo Kid.
Well, no,
I think it's a kid film.
And I actually think
for the
myself,
kid it was fine, but I'm just saying for everyone else.
I think me
But
and Dane
then he
actually,
wouldn't be
look
competitive.
at it the same way. It was a hodgepodge of stuff, but Dane thought it went together better, and I just didn't think it went together well.
Yeah.
So we
I
kind of
think
looked at it the same way.
I think it speaks to a very clear, specific audience and gives them exactly what they want.
But I grew up then, man. I didn't care for that at all.
Mm-hmm. Well, but you know what I'm saying? Like people who are really love like 80s culture, 80s nostalgia, and who kind of live in that period.
And there
What
are
are you trying to say?
people who loved the 80s. I mean, the 80s there was a hell of a lot of Johnny Rebel freedom, you know.
But yeah, but you know, maybe I'm not a Mad Max fan or a Road Warrior fan either. So this just didn't work with me.
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, that's a little bit of what I noticed, but overall, it did have a lot of creativity and a lot of, I guess you'd say, fan service for people who love the things that they obviously love.
Celeste, I understand that you watched it like a week before, or whatnot, and you watched it recently. What did you think of the film?
I watched it a few weeks ago and then I rewatched it for today, but I really wanted to like this movie, but I didn't. I really did. I thought I was going to love it.
Yes, I'm not by myself. Thank you.
No, I actually agreed with you. I thought it was like really disorganized, really unfocused. It didn't like I thought the beginning had a lot of promise, but the direction it went was just kind of
Yes.
blah to me. It was like it didn't do what it could with the world. It just sort of made up its bunch of stuff that seemed really thrown together. And I hated that Apple character. Hated.
Oh my god, she's one of my favorite characters ever. I love her.
She reminded me of Harley Quinn, who I also hate. Just this like overly happy, bouncy thing. But you know, like in trying to make a strong female character, they make a female character that's so girly and seems so like ditzy and unintelligent.
But she was a friendship.
I
She was
get
friendship
the reason
embodied. Yeah.
behind it. It just didn't vibe with me. And I am a sparkly, happy person on the inside. It just seemed like too spacey, too like the fact that they would design a friendship robot to be that ditzy, like that's the idealized version of a woman, really rubbed me the wrong way.
Elaborate on her being ditzy. Because I don't see her as ditzy at all.
She acted that way, like the way she talked, you know, like she'd gloss over things, or, you know, she was like, you know, oh, I'm here for cereal. Like, you know, just sort of out there, like not having normal interactions with people, but having sort of.
She was really.
Well, I think that was really the nuances. Is why I relate to her, for one. But the other thing, I think those were nuances to the deeper meaning of her character not being a human. And also, like, the lack of. You can sort of see her arc. I mean, her emotions are pretty much companionship and happiness.
Right. I just felt like the way it was played made it seem like sort of a idealized, you know, overly male fantasy version of a happy friendship thing, not an actual real interaction. It just sort of seemed really off to me.
It was. I think the whole thing was very tropey. Anyway, I mean, it not just that, but even though that's very much there, but again, that is part of what clashed for me, is that that's such a modern trope, as opposed to the other tropes, which were much more of the period. Like what they didn't have, which I think would have fit better. What they didn't have was they didn't have like the really fritzy haired, you know, kind of MTV vamp. Yeah, they didn't have that, which again, that might have been a little too mature in this Turbo Kid. After all, that character might have been out of his age range if they'd have had that. But like when I think of like 80s, I think of that, you know, somebody like Apollonia from Purple Rain or something like that. Yeah, that's more what I think of in my head when I think of like 80s kind of stereotypical. Like,
she was like the only real female character in the whole thing that like had many lines or really had any screen time. So I felt like for that portrayal, given the other male characters and the way they were portrayed, I mean, also the bad guys were kind of thrown in, like we're bad, we're badass, you know. Like,
it's you can very clearly tell who everyone's supposed to be. Like you've got our main character who's sort of like Elliot mixed with Tron mixed with.
Did anyone kind of see how? Did anyone kind of see how Zeus had when you first were introduced to Zeus in the arena, that that metal mask that he had on, that was actually from Sinbad?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, it's.
I knew I'd seen that somewhere before. I just couldn't remember where.
Yeah. Well, but it is very. It's very. That's the thing. Like you can very clearly tell who everyone's supposed to be. He's obviously based on every Mad Max villain and a little bit from Waterworld, even though that was '95. You got the cowboy character who's sort of like your Australian Indiana Jones almost, mixed with a little bit of Bruce Campbell because of the hand chopping off thing.
Well, it was a collaboration of two countries together.
Ash Williams, I should say, rather than Bruce Campbell. What'd you say?
It was a collaboration of two countries.
It was.
That film.
Yeah, it was New Zealand and Canada.
Yeah.
You can very clearly tell kind of the it's very archetypical, but I would go beyond that and say very tropey, not just in terms of characters, but in terms of story arcs and character arcs. Which again, it's more of one of those things where it's like if you like those cliches, if you like those tropes and all that, then this is if you like that decade and all that stuff, then it's absolutely the movie that's tailor made for you. And if you don't,
also, if you don't take movies very seriously,
Yeah,
this
that's
movie is
true.
also for you.
yeah, exactly. Which, and again, I love movies that don't.
I don't like to take movies seriously. I was just like wanted to turn it off. Though it was just so boring to me. Just no substance at all.
That's how I felt. I wanted to like it because I liked the look of it.
Yeah,
And I liked the feel of it. I just didn't like it.
well, I definitely respect the achievement of it without a doubt, and I would say again that it's.
I mean, it has a
tailor-made
big fan following.
Yeah,
It's just not for me.
it's tailor made for a very specific audience. Which, speaking of audience appeal, one thing I thought was sort of interesting, but also sort of strange, but part of the charm, I guess, was the fact that, and I tend to love violence in movies, but this was very, very violent relative to what was otherwise a more or less kid-friendly plot, like on paper.
He was very hobo with a shotgun-y, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
but the violence wasn't like they could consider it gory, but
Well,
it
it was
was
really
more fun made. You know what I mean? Like
yeah, it
when
was
they
was more
slice the
goofy,
head
yeah.
off and then the blood spurts out, it didn't look so real. So
No,
I
it
could
was-
see where maybe it appeals to 12-year-olds more than
maybe.
like
I mean,
a real bloodhound.
it was very Tarantino, which of course he's ripping off everything from the 70s, but like the whole like pressurized blood, and it's like nobody's got that much blood in them at that high of pressure and that kind of stuff, which that's part
I
of the
did like that.
It's part of the fun. I mean,
that's part
That
of
was-
the make,
that-
that's
that
part
was-
of the make believe aspect of it, but it also just in a weird way it also was sort of like a self-limiting it was very self-limiting in the sense that you're pretty much strictly appealing to people who grew up in the 80s and who are now adults who wanted to have like a really badass live action 80s cartoon on the big screen or in a live action with blood and guts and that kind of stuff, which again for that audience that's exactly what you have.
And visually, it's a great movie. I thought
very-
visually it's
It was
amazing.
I just thought it was a little odd in terms of audience appeal that they have that, and yet if they didn't, then the rest of the plot would be really kid friendly, and you might have even broadened your audience a bit while still retaining the 80s nostalgia factor. So that's just my own opinion. It speaks very much to a very specific group of people. But anyway.
I think it speaks to several different groups of people. Myself, Dustin, go. What was this your first time seeing it?
Oh, I actually forgot to watch it, so. Oh, right, I'm lying. I forgot. Anyway. So yeah, I saw it for the first time a few hours ago. Don't feel bad, Dane. I do that every week, basically.
Yeah. I've gotten into that habit.
Well, whatever. Could be worse. Anyway, so this was the first time I saw it. I heard a lot of hype about it when it first came out. I didn't really know what to expect. Like, Katie had talked about Apple before, and so I remembered a little bit of it from that. And so I'd been meaning to see it for a while, and I'm happy I saw it. Like, I don't know what your fucking problems were, other people. Like, I thought it was pretty great.
Yay,
but then again,
high five, Dustin.
Yay, high five over the
It's made
internet.
for 12-year-olds.
Well, I didn't necessarily have problems with it, quote unquote. I'm just very aware of the tropiness of it, but again, it's not necessarily a problem. So I'm kind of in the middle.
Even when it's described exactly as a problem. I see. Word games. Anyway, so I was pretty happy I got to see it. Like some of the things that you guys pointed out, like with like Apple's character, it's like, what's your name? Like that kind of annoyed me. Like her name, it's like, oh, of course it's her name. Like he even makes that comment, and it's like, oh, okay, it's like, you're weird, get away, and it's like, and then like a few scenes later, she's like following him around and like at his house, and like, is she like a robot or something? And then like 20 minutes later, yep, called it. Like
That's interesting you called it, because I was kind of in Celeste's boat in the sense of like, oh yeah, here's our Manic Pixie Dream Girl type, movie.
I had never heard of that term before.
Look it up. I think
That
you'll
was a
be
thing.
interested to see how many.
Yeah, I think me not really totally going in my head to that reference either. I'm with Dustin as well. Like I saw something coming. Like there was something about her that was too good to be true. She was too happy
I
in
thought she was
this
on drugs.
apocalypse. Well,
Her eyes
just
looked
knew-
like she was on drugs.
She looked
I just
pretty.
could tell there was something
Yeah.
different. There was
I
definitely something
didn't
different
think
about her.
I didn't think drugs, but it's like, oh my god, that face. It's like, she's pretty attractive, I guess. But
I thought
yeah.
she was on drugs and she was gonna rob him.
She was super ADD.
All right, so now we
I
know
thought it
why
was-
Dustin
I thought
liked
it
the
was like-
film.
I thought it was like the
It's
hair
kinda
dye.
hard looking at the robot.
Well, didn't you already say, oh, the girl was hot, I guess? Like that was your advanced analysis of the character. I mean, don't.
I'm glad that matters about a character at all. Like there was nothing about her portrayed as sexy whatsoever, but yet we're still going there. Interesting.
Those eyes. Those eyes.
Well, she was pretty.
Those eyes.
It
Well, you
wasn't
can kind of
like-
tell, like, in the context of, like, that world, it's like, okay, this guy basically just lives alone. Like, you could tell that he was kind of trying not to be attracted to her, but he couldn't really help it.
Mhm.
Like, that's the impression I got, and it's just like,
Well, it felt very coming of age, It
Yeah.
felt very
Yeah.
adolescent romance.
organic. I think organic is the word I would use. Like, it didn't seem like forced at all. It's kind of like, I just met you. But
There was a,
And I'm not entirely sure. I'm not entirely sure that it was a romance at all myself, because they almost kissed, but they were more like friends.
yeah,
You
they,
know,
well, they did kiss at the end.
like really good friends.
Mhm.
Yeah, they did, but
It was
And
sort of adolescent romancy, so
Right.
I was
not
happy with it.
sexual.
More about companionship, about this boy who lost his parents at a young age and has been living by himself in the wasteland all this time. And then he finds this person who's everything that he's resisting, all this happy, balled up energy that he's,
and
he's
he's been
depressed.
alone
Wow,
for
that-
so.
that- wow,
He's
Exactly.
been alone
that-
for so long, collecting all this junk.
That
So-
describes
Right,
like
that was
Bruce
his-
Wayne and Cat in a Gordon TV show.
Where they do the traditional Bruce Wayne and Catwoman thing, but not really as good.
Well, they're kids, right?
Gotham
Well-
is largely a mess. I used to enjoy it, but I haven't seen it for a while.
Oh, that pretty much steals the show, man. But yeah, I enjoy that.
I should rewatch it. But anyway, kind of getting back on track, like with Blake. So after she got shot the first time, it's like, wait, didn't she? She's a robot. I knew it. I've got to be right. And then it's like, weren't you shot? It's like, oh yeah, I'm fine. Robot. Yes, I knew it. And he could not be killed. Like
that's
I
another.
don't buy that she just dies at the end like that.
Yeah, that's. I'm glad you brought that up, because that was a criticism I had of it, was that she quote unquote dies a few too many times for that to fully have quite the pathos that they're going for.
Yeah, he had like that bracelet. I thought she was gonna be like the Iron Giant, and like the thing was gonna like light up at the end of the movie. It's like, oh, she's because like the first time like she was like left at the junkyard, and like the showdown starts, then like the bracelet lights up, and she like gets up, and like I thought that was gonna be the last shot of the movie, like the bracelet lights up, and she's just gonna like pull herself together.
And
that's for part two.
I guess
That's part two starts off.
I guess just duct taping a robot's head to a robot body is all you need to do to fix a robot.
Well, the rules for their robot, the rules for their robots.
We
seem
don't even
pretty
have
weak.
friendship robots. It's fiction, so you can do whatever you want.
Duct tape fixes everything.
Well, that was one thing I kept kind of thinking. It's like, oh, I really hope they don't go there. It's like, oh yeah, I'm completely human. Like everything works, and I'm like, why? Like it was almost like that Bride of Chucky moment. It's like, I can cry. What else can we do?
Okay, this is where she came off as ditzy to me another moment. When she said goodbye to the dead body, it's like, clearly it's dead. She knows that he's dead. Like,
But she needed closure.
I think it's just a
we
joke
needed
to, like,
to
creep the dude
understand
out.
what she was. There needed to be an explanation of what she was, and I think
Right, but
that
she-
is less in her character and more in the storytelling. Like,
I agree.
okay,
but-
how do we show that?
I agree that it could have been, but she came off as really sort of like a ditzy sort of character that had no real she was just like, oh yeah, I'm angry and I can kick some ass, but I'm also kind of dumb. Like,
well, and I think that's also meant to fool the viewer, or at least keep you from realizing that she's a robot just yet. Like, you know, make her look sort of harmless or helpless or whatever. So
right.
Maybe the director was just sexist, though, and that's how he wanted his women.
It's also, I guess, fair to point out that with the sort of the ditzy Comic-Con kind of type that, well, you know what I mean. It's not just this movie. It's like Scott Pilgrim versus the World. It's, you know, all kinds of characters in more modern movies, but that is a type, and it stems from a certain subset of the audience. So it's definitely out there, and it's meant to appeal to that type of person. So it's not, I don't know if it's necessarily always intended as a slight or anything.
That's
like
interesting, because would you say I'm that type of person? Because I mean, her character really appeals to me, but I don't see myself as the ditzy con girl.
No,
Not remotely.
You know?
no.
Well, appeal to does not necessarily mean that you're the same as. You know, those are two different things.
She comes off as very naive, and you do not.
Yeah, I mean,
well, and I think what I can say is in terms of what about her character appeals to me. Like, there's one line in particular that she says in that movie that I love so much, and Turbo Kid says, "Do you want to see something cool?" And she says, "I always want to see something cool."
Oh,
and that's like one of my favorite lines ever. That is so me. I always want to see something cool. I just loved her enthuson. I loved
that's like
her
Stand By Me.
positive attitude.
She's always so cheerful. Wow, like that was one of my comments.
Kind of
that
a
would have been a note.
Stepford attitude, which normally in a regular sense, which is what I refer to as the Stepford attitude.
Right.
Because the people always smiling and making sure that everything is just a-okay.
I do have kind of another thing too. Oh, who?
Yeah.
Did I cut you off?
No, what movie was it?
What movie was what?
Do you want to see a dead body?
So Stand By Me.
That's right, Stand By Me.
I've seen dead bodies in Milwaukee. Anyway, one thing I did want to like comment on, like, was that scene where like he's, you know, it's like, okay, this is how to survive, you know, get a weapon. If you don't have one, make one. And she's just like playing with like the gnome stick. Like that little montage where she's just like screwing around like with it. I know someone who is almost exactly like that, and it was like, did they get Krista? Did they get Crystal for this movie? What the because I have met someone in real life who acts exactly like that, and it's like, oh, okay. So I just like saw her as like this person I knew in high school for most of the movie. Like after that point, it's like, oh, okay.
Well, and
I love her enthusiasm so much.
And that speaks to the larger point that type of character can be found in real life, and there's a lot of women that love the Harley Quinn type of very bubbly, fun, somewhat ditzy character because they either like that or they relate to it or whatever. So it's definitely
sexy, man.
Thing.
I'm pretty sure she's a voice actor for Funimation now.
I could see it. She's got a good voice for that kind of thing.
The person I knew in high school, not whoever this is.
Go ahead.
Although her voice was fine too, I guess.
I had a love-hate relationship for this film myself. I watched it come out on Indiegogo, and it wasn't until after the campaign ended is when I picked up the nice steel book, Blu-ray, DVD, the copy when it first came out and whatnot. And I definitely got that 80s vibe, and that's kind of what intrigued me about it. Now, I do get that it's like Mad Max on a BMX bike, okay? But I'm also getting the feel of like Last Starfighter and comic book nostalgia from the film myself. I definitely felt the 80s feel throughout the thing. Like everybody else said, Michael Ironsides. I remember him from Total Recall, specifically. So
Scanners. He's awesome in Scanners.
Of course, I also think that the BMX bikes are somewhat, out of place. It's kind of like if you went through the graveyard of Lance Armstrong's bike bump, and decided to go and use them instead.
Well, the thing I didn't get about it, which I perfectly understand if it's a turbo kid who's got the bike, but what I didn't get was why everybody has a bike. That just, I mean, so is there no such thing as gasoline in this world? I mean, I get that.
Obviously not. They barely have water.
Yeah, I guess
I
not.
Or are they gonna have gas?
I actually like the bike
There
thing.
was maybe one thing that could.
Me
like,
too.
run
It's
on
something
gas, but I
different.
saw
The
them the whole
cars
time.
have been done.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I do think that would have been a.
Yeah, but the whole movie's been done before in bits and pieces.
I think it would.
But not like quite like this.
It would have had a little bit more of a David and Goliath thing with a bike versus like motors. I mean, the whole kid on a bike thing is obvious with the similar dress and hairstyle. They're obviously trying to do ET with the ending bike chase and all that stuff. I mean, that's sort of the. And to be fair, the 80s was like the last decade when kids could actually ride bikes without needing tracking devices in their light-up sneakers for fear of kidnappers, because from the 90s onward, parents were just rampantly paranoid about their kids leaving the house, so now they just sit on the computer all day. But that's a rant for another time.
I haven't seen E.T. for like 25 years. That's how it ends, huh?
That was my
Damn.
most traumatizing movie of all time.
Dave, you got the movie
Crap
for
out
next
of me.
week, Dave.
Next week is Halloween. We should actually watch a Halloween thing.
We're doing
something set up for next week, and we're talking about doing something for Wednesday too. So
I want to do either Trick or Treat or Halloween 3. We could maybe even do both.
Ooh,
Halloween 3.
I like both of them.
You guys should probably
Trick
do
or treat or trick or treat.
Trick or treat.
Satan's
Trick or
Little
treat.
Helper.
The one with Sam, the Michael Dougherty one. The
Yeah,
anthology
trick or treat.
Yeah,
I like trick
or
or
treat.
treat with Sammy Kerr and Gene
We can do
Simmons
that later.
and
It's
Ozzy
not really
Osbourne.
Halloween
Love
themed.
that one.
we can do that definitely another night. But I'm thinking Wednesday we'll do. Well, since it seems like people want to do Halloween 3, let's do that one. Even though we kind of touched on it last week with the sequels, I'm definitely down for it.
yeah.
You mean Wednesday
I
tomorrow?
actually just saw it
or-
at the Times on
No,
Friday.
Wednesday. Oh,
Wednesday, November 1st.
Wednesday next week. Yes,
Which is November 1st.
correct.
So it seems like nobody is aware that Halloween is Tuesday.
Yeah.
I
am
totally
aware.
understand.
Although-
I have a chance to talk to a director of the film called The Dark Side of the Web, and I've given it to several viewers. He didn't really have any reviews out on yet. They're not, and some of them have liked it, some of them have not. So I wanted to get an interview in with this guy before he went on to like other.
What did I tell you about it, Dave?
I'm down with that. That's good. Let's just talk about
You
a
thought
Halloween thing.
you thought it was pretty much shitty, but awesomely shitty.
Oh, I said it was brilliant and shitty at the same time, man. Come on.
There you go.
This hater of everything
But,
that's good and true, huh?
Next week Tuesday is going to be a talk on Eraserhead.
I
Oh,
love
I really want to
Eraserhead.
see that, but I won't be there. Oh,
Sorry.
I've been wanting to watch that movie forever.
If you want, I can make it for when. Well, I had to
If you
talk
take-
to the director.
If you take a bunch of drugs and then have a nightmare, like you've basically seen it.
Oh, you've got me hooked.
That's essentially the plot line. I'm not
That's
even
essentially my life. I have lots of nightmares.
kidding. Just trying to force me to take lots of
But
drugs.
Here's a little question for everyone, just to kind of ask about the whole like Manic Pixie Dream Girl type and about characters that we like character types we like or whatever. I think there's a big difference between characters that we character types that we like versus characters that we relate to versus people who are exactly like us, quote unquote. I mean, there's a whole range of things there. So, you know, I just feel like that's kind of an important thing to establish. Because, like, for example, like I really love villains in movies. I can somewhat relate to the kind of overlord bad guy just because they are usually the same Myers-Briggs type as me, which is INTJ, if you ever look those up. They're usually those, but I'm also try not to be evil, you know, not too much. But
It
you
depends
know,
on my mood.
yeah, it does. But it,
Well,
you know,
Harley Quinn was sexy and crazy.
yeah. Well, here's
That appeals to me, crazy and sexy.
yeah. Well, that's sort of the thing. It's like there is a big difference between, you know, you can like a character versus relating to one versus, you know, there's just all these different layers of it. So when, you know, someone may like a character in a piece, then I don't know, that just you have to really
Or really see
distinguish.
themselves in a character when they're actually the opposite of you.
Well, who do you see yourself as a character, Dave, in a movie?
I'm the alien. Yay.
Well, in certain, oh god,
Well, come on, Dave.
well,
AVP.
any movie.
Yeah, any movie. Who do you think you're the same as?
I started out as like this bookish type character who carried around like 50 books in high school. So
is that
Me
like the
too.
bookworm? The bookworm on Batman
like-
1966 series?
I would say almost like that fat kid who was in the new It, who was just so intelligently smart. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Mixed with Melvin mixed with Melvin the Mop Boy. So for many years, I was pretty much bullied. So in high school. So
sorry to hear that.
But I definitely feel I was an outcast at one point in time. But
you're now the Toxic Avenger, and it's all better.
Oh, it's so good.
Toxic baby.
I had something great happen to me today. So I was at GameStop, and like they know me by now, so we were just like randomly talking. And the manager was like, "Oh yeah, you know, I love like the '80s kind of stuff." Like she showed me like the intro for Thanksgiving because she was like, "Oh, I bet they spend 80% of their budget on just this intro. Look how nice this intro is compared to how the rest of the movie." And I was like, "Oh, like the Toxic Avenger kind of stuff," or like. I asked, you know, is that a Trauma movie? And she was like, what's Trauma? It's like Toxic Avenger. And she had never seen it. And I was like, oh my God, if you love 80s stuff. And so I convinced her to watch the Toxic Avenger
Good
for the first time.
recommendation.
And hopefully, I wish I could see her face. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
You should have asked her on a date to watch the Toxic Avenger. You know, that's what the movie me and Ryan watched the first time we ever watched a movie together.
I make
Actually,
everybody I know watch that movie. Like, it doesn't necessarily matter, like, date or not.
Lloyd Kaufman said that part of the appeal of Toxie as a character is that because of the romance aspect that they were able to get couples rather than just guys, you know.
Sure, I can see that.
Yeah, and I do feel like that helps to give a, you know, that helps with appeal across the board. As far as
it's kind of bad though, man. If the chick's enjoying the flick too, because now you can't get a blowjob during the movie if the chick likes it, right?
That's not true necessarily.
I'm gonna go Star Trek: The Next Generation. I don't know.
Oh my God! Don't even go to Star Trek. It's becoming an association.
Well, as far as
like a Pavlovian bell.
As far as characters that I relate to or whatever, I feel like there's all kinds of characters that I like. I tend to like in movies. I like to.
Is there a character that you relate to in Turbo Kid?
In Turbo Kid, no, there is not.
I think you're more like a bunny rabbit.
In fact,
I might be a bunny rabbit.
Well, in fact, I have to say that in most media, most fiction, I tend to not relate to maybe 95 to 99% of the characters, just because I'm a very specific kind of person. But I do feel like there's all kinds of characters I like to watch. I tend to like to watch a lot of very extreme personalities. But in terms of characters I relate to, what?
I see the Joker in you.
No, I'm not the Joker at all. Because the Joker is way too chaotic deliberately. I'm very much ordered in my way of going about things. So like I feel like at my idealized self, I'm something similar to Hannibal Lecter. That's in my idealized self. Realistically, though, if I were to be absolutely truthful, the kinds of characters I relate to the most are characters like the Elephant Man, like the Hunchback of Notre Dame, like Hugo from the movie Hugo, kind of the reclusive, very lonely characters who live alone in like an isolated place, who really dream of being accepted and that kind of stuff. Hugo especially, because he wasn't like deformed or anything, but like if you see that movie,
Dave, I told you that's exactly how he was.
well, if you guys ever have seen the Scorsese movie Hugo, that is actually very similar to how I feel in life, and the character reminds me a lot of myself. So that's a good one to check out if you ever want to kind of learn more about my own feeling in life.
Celeste, if there was a character in a movie or whatnot, what would your character that you think that you're more like?
I would have to say I don't usually identify with people much like Dane, but if I had to pick someone, I would say I'm the first to die in a slasher movie for having sex. And there's probably way more to the character. They're probably an interesting person, but nobody will ever know. They had sex.
Dustin, if you could see yourself.
Go ahead.
Well, I have kind of a few different, so it's almost like my personality changes every day. So I have kind of a couple of answers, like just as like a movie entity. I think the alien is probably my favorite thing because it's just such a straightforward like creature. Like what it does on the screen, like it has no other like motivations beyond, just kill people. Which I guess is sort of a weird way to start. But in terms of like what I kind of want to be like professionally, I kind of think of like Dr. West from Reanimator. Like I really like how like driven and committed Dr. West is to his goals, and he doesn't really consider like anything else. It's like, oh, people think that's weird. It's like that's unimportant as long as I get this done. And then for a while, when I was living in a different city and my life was almost totally different, I felt a lot like Elijah Wood's Frank Zito, like from the Maniac remake, just like alone and kind of miserable. I didn't kill anybody, but I know the way that movie was shot really resonated.
Speaking of Elijah Woods, there's another character that I somewhat resonate with. Is Elijah Wood's character in The Faculty.
I'm so glad you didn't say Sin City.
He was in The Faculty?
Yes, he was in The Faculty.
Well, then again, I barely even remembered him being in Sin City. I thought Sin City was kind of lame.
Oh no!
I love Sin City.
Well, you thought Turbo Kid was lame, so
I love it.
Now, Sin City 2, on the other hand,
never seen 2, but I love Sin City.
Everyone said it was bad.
I don't know if it was like, it's like, here's the way I'd say it. Sin City's like the A sides, and then the second one's more like the B sides. So it's like stylistically, it's very much the same. Just the stories aren't quite as good, but like the style of it is absolutely consistent. It's just the stories that they chose are just not as good, but they're not like unsalvageable by any means. There's still a lot to like about it, but the first one just has a lot more energy. Even though they ripped off the story structure completely from Pulp Fiction.
And anything to put Eva back in.
She was wonderful, Eva Green.
That was sort of another thing too. I think I mentioned it like in the sequel thing too, when we were talking about Spider-Man. But like Dr. Connors, in The Amazing Spider-Man. Like, I did get, like, messages and calls. It's like, hey, I just saw this character in this movie, and it reminded me so much of you and, like, what I think you'd be like as a scientist. It's like, oh, neat. So we could also throw the lizard in there.
Since we're going off on that tangent, what character would you be? Would you think that you were like, or that you think you're related to, Tito?
I don't want to answer that because I don't want to get arrested if anybody does this.
Krug from Last House on the Left. Got it.
Oh, come on. Shoot.
Man, I mean,
That's fired.
I really relate to Dexter, man. But the problem is I don't have enough balls to go through with what he does. And I'm talking about Dexter the serial killer, not Dexter the cartoon.
Dexter used to be so good. Like, I can see that. That's a good answer too. Like, Dexter's magnetism is really admirable, like, as a character.
Any other characters that you relate to, Katie?
Oh my God, a million. I'm not a one character girl for sure. But I mean, I could name off Lydia from Beetlejuice and Nancy from The Craft and Trash from Return of the Living Dead and Beatrix Kiddo from Kill Bill. But the one that nobody will probably know is Dawn Wiener. Has anyone seen Welcome to the Dollhouse?
By the way, Dawn.
In 1995.
Nope. By the way, Dawn Wiener was a name I used to dance under.
Nice.
Like, for real?
Well, I mean, I love women that like to role play. It sounds like you'd be game.
But in any case,
I'm guessing no one's seen that movie, but it's a
I
good
do
movie.
want to. I want to see.
Welcome to the Dollhouse.
I've seen Happiness, which I loved.
For fuck's sake, next week is Halloween. Let's do Halloween shit.
I'll have to find it. I can do either Monday. I can do either Monday or Wednesday. Which is it?
Could we switch Halloween with Eraserhead so we do Halloween 3 on Halloween and then Eraserhead on November 1st?
I have to talk to the director to see if that'd be okay.
Dustin.
Oh, wait a week to do Eraserhead so I can do it on the week that I can be on.
Yeah.
I'll see if I can do that.
Did I just accidentally derail this because I feel bad?
Obviously.
You should feel bad, Dustin, just in life.
What?
Are we not doing Tuesday? What's the deal? Because Tuesday works best for me.
Yeah,
oh, no,
Tuesday works best for me too. We can definitely do
Satan's Little Helper. That's a hell of a.
It's just that everyone seems to want to do something Halloweenish on the Tuesday. So I'm going to have.
In your defense, I don't think you realized it was Halloween on Tuesday.
In my defense, I was trying to get him in before he actually gets bombarded by other people.
I can still get him on. I'm sure he'll be happy to talk about that too. I mean, we're gonna interview him first. And...
Oh, you mean instead of doing Eraserhead, switching and doing Halloween 3 or something like that?
Yes.
Yeah, too bad I got to work.
Yeah, wait a week.
I got all three of the masks I could put up there.
Because I can't be on next week because I'm taking every other week off.
Okay.
So I want to do Eraserhead.
Sounds good.
And I want to do Halloween 3.
This is a post-show argument. What's going? Why are we still on?
We're doing Halloween 3. We're doing Halloween 3 Tuesday. I'll see if the director's okay with it. Cool.
Yes.
All right.
If he's not, we'll still be happy to talk to him anyway, and then we'll just do.
Also known as Season of the Witch. We should really call it Season of the Witch.
Yeah. You know,
I just like being able to.
Oh, we need to be able to put that promo on. Like, we need to figure out how to like screen share or whatever, and then like have the thing playing. Like, we can get that clip so easily. Just like we need to start the stream with that clip.
Totally.
Oh,
because you want to murder innocent children is what you're saying.
A continuous clip.
Who's really innocent?
A continuous
Batman Spider
clip.
opens their show with that around Halloween with that intro, with a giveaway at 9. Watch the magic pumpkin.
We are not giving anything away at 9.
Except death.
Hopefully they're giving away Freddy Krueger is supposed to be DLC for Dead by Daylight, but nobody knows when he's coming out. And it's on like the verge of riot.
Oh,
so they better give away Freddy Krueger soon.
Hey Dave, don't forget you said you'd cut your toenails live on air tonight.
What?
Which that actually reminded me when you said Freddy Krueger. That reminds me. So if Turbo Kid was like 80s nostalgia, the movie, think about how it's going to be when you have Ready Player One come out, where you have Freddy Krueger and Iron Giant and the DeLorean and all this pop culture just, all in one movie. That's going to be like, and I thought Scott Pilgrim versus the World was going to be internet. I thought that was Internet the movie, but apparently Ready Player One is going to be Internet the movie.
What's really so wrong with that, though? I mean, it should be fine. I mean, somebody made some complaint about it that I don't remember what they actually said, but I remember it sounded really stupid, and I didn't listen. There was some criticism of it, but again, I don't remember.
I don't know. But you know what I mean. It's like that could possibly, it's like I don't know. It could be a slippery slope as far as like there's a line between kind of fun homage or fun cameo, like in Back to the Future Part 2 with Jaws 19, which was funny. Like there's a fine line between homage or a little wink and just sort of exploiting pop culture reference for the sake of getting the audience in there. Which I do feel like with Turbo Kid, I feel like there's a lot more there was a lot more of multiple kinds of things that they were drawing from, so it wasn't just one specific thing, and I think that it was really meant out of love rather than, ooh, let's throw Freddy Krueger in here, let's throw in the DeLorean,
it was very earnest. Like Turbo Kid had a very earnest vibe all throughout.
Yeah, it had a little, and they
were making noise.
Yeah, somebody's like having tea with Bigfoot or something.
Like I'm gonna get a bag of chips and just hit it in front of my mic.
Kind of, but yeah, I mean, you're right. It had more earnesty and the fact that it was stuff that was similar to stuff that but it wasn't like the exact same thing, just for the sake of reference. That's making it sound like I'm casting a lot of aspersions on Ready Player One before it even comes out. It could even be really good. I don't know. But it's just that there's always a danger whenever you do stuff like that it could easily slip into, just reference, like the Emoji Movie, which was reference.
Oh my God.
Which was reference the movie.
Well, I mean, there are worse actors. I mean, like the recent Ghostbusters, for example. Oh, the pain.
I loved it.
I defended that movie so much, and it was like, it can't be as bad as people were saying. And then I saw it, and it was worse.
I loved it.
It was worse.
Loved it.
I actually liked it.
I didn't even bother seeing it.
It hurt.
I'm also not a huge Ghostbusters fan in general.
I thought it was great.
I didn't know. I didn't know what kind of director Paul Feig was. I don't like
see Bridesmaids.
I didn't see any of it. Like I'd never heard of any of the main actresses before. Like
really, not even Kristen Wiig or
no, none of them. Like I thought, wow, they got really unfunny people for this movie. Holy crap! It's like, oh no, they're established stars. No, this has got to be their first movie. That's impossible.
Well, no, they. Well, I've seen Kristen Wiig in other things, and I actually think she does pretty well with drama. Like she was in Mother recently.
Well, one of them, what was it? I think it was McKinnon. Was like, I'm trying to do Egon from the animated series. It's like, wow, you did such a crummy job. Have you ever seen the animated series? Holy shit! But it was a letdown. What was I talking about?
I don't know. We got off topic.
The only. So, in any case, I think I'm going to wrap this up, guys. So, why don't we start what we do? So, Celeste, why don't you go ahead and tell us what you do, where you're from?
All right, I'm Celeste. I am a co-host on the Horror Host TV show, Degger's Dark Coffin Classics. If you're not in the viewing area, which is in Wisconsin, Milwaukee, Racine, Kenosha area, you can find us online at vimeo.com/ddcc. And I am also the host for the Glamour Junkies Burlesque Troupe out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. You can find us at Glamour Junkies on Facebook.
Awesome. Katie, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do, where you're from?
I'm Katie Cadaver from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I'm a horror artist. I do makeup for the horror punk band Ratbat Spider. I am also one of Deadger's Dead Girls, also with Deadger's Dark Coffin Classics. And I am a burlesque performer as well, and I have a show coming up on November 3rd called A Night of Gorgeously Grotesque Rock and Roll Burlesque. That's happening at the River West Public House on Friday, November 3rd.
Okay, awesome. Tito, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from?
Tito?
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 You can't hear me?
I can hear you now.
I can hear you.
Oh, I'm from Michigan. I just do my simple things and live my simple life. Thanks. Who's next?
Alrighty. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do.
Oh, who, me? I watch a lot of movies and collect. I recently launched an Instagram to just show off my collection. So I post a picture of something that I have around the apartment and kind of put like a little bit of a story to, you know, where I got it, you know, why I want it, something along those lines. And
Nice.
I think
That's great. How long you been doing that?
about a week. I think DHR Hunter, it's like Dustin Horror Hunter is supposed to be the idea, is my handle on Instagram. So feel free to go like follow me, and the more people follow me, the more incentive I have to actually post stuff, because I kind of take my time and type like a paragraph or so about the item. So it's kind of a slow process, and I have like hundreds of things to show off. So anything to incentivize me.
That sounds great.
HR Hunter, it's all one word. But for the most part, I go to UW Milwaukee. I'm studying programming, and I absolutely hate it. It's awful and hard. I enjoy it when it works, though. So take that, Python programming. And I want to study reptiles, which is why I have such a thing for reptile horror movies, or just horror movies with monsters in general.
Be careful. It's embarrassing if you have to go to the doctor's emergency room with a reptile up your ass.
What?
That's just reptile dysfunction. That's
Yeah. Well, hey, I mean, I'm trying really hard, all right? The stupid Python programming language, my homework was like a week late. I made too many Miss Snakes.
Who's next? Come on, Dane. Bring it home.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yeah. I am Dane Kyle, independent filmmaker out of Charlotte, North Carolina. Just putting the finishing touches on a horror short film, which I'm almost certain is going to be accepted into a horror anthology coming up. Once I get officially accepted, probably by next week or maybe the week after that, then I'll be able to make more of an official kind of announcement about it, talk about, promote it, where you can check it out and all that stuff. So that's happening. I'm gearing up the casting for my first feature now, trying to put the finishing touches on my film noir short, all kinds of stuff going on all at once. So you can check me out on YouTube. My channel is The Dane Kyle, Keil, and you can find me on Facebook or Twitter. On Facebook now, I have a lot of Blu-rays and stuff on sale if you are interested. In the next few weeks, I'll be able to go into more depth about the anthology, presuming that I get in, which seems like I will, but don't want to count my chickens too soon. Especially because,
Oh, well, I was just going to say there's a good story about that. There's a clip I saw somewhere of very young Steven Spielberg. He's got like a handheld camcorder, and he's at Joe Spinell's house, and he's like, "Hi, I'm Steven Spielberg. We're here watching the Academy Awards, and Jaws is about to win Best Picture, and then like they're playing it, like somebody like holds the camera and they keep it on like Steven Spielberg and Joe Spino like watching the announcements, and Jaws doesn't win, and Spielberg just puts his hands on his head. Oh no, I'm an asshole. And Joe Spinell's like, don't worry about it, kid. You're great. So just keep stuff like that in mind. You know, everybody has little moments like that sometimes. I'm sure you'll get in though, because you're great. So.
And my name is David Streggy. I run Inside Movies Galore. Thank you for listening to us. No, leave that name alone. Chewy.
Chewy the Wolfman.
No. Anyways, I'm gonna kill you later. My name is David Streggy. I run Inside Movies Galore. I write for Movies Galore of Milwaukee, and I'm a somewhat small-time producer. In fact, Dana and I will be working together soon. So,
yeah, which that's another thing. That's for a different horror short film, not the one for the anthology, for its own thing. I'm just trying to get the mask maker from England. He's been really pretty busy, but that's part of David and I will be kind of producing that together. Hopefully, before I can shoot that before my feature film, like the actual shooting of it, gets going sometime next year.
Most definitely. So stay tuned for that. And I know I've got Wrestle Massacre coming out next year with Brad Twiggs. So definitely catch that if you can. In any case, tune in next week for Halloween 3 on Inside Movies Galore. Thank you.
You got a good movie. That's unbelievable, Dave.
But in any case, say good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night,
everyone.
Good night, ladies.